Welcome everyone to day 8 of the Democrat shutdown. As is our custom now, we'll come out every morning and give you an update on where things stand. I've tried to make this as simple as possible and as digestible as possible. It seems complicated, what's happening in Washington right now. It actually is very simple. Don't let the Democrats distract you and try to convince you of things that are not true. Yesterday, or a couple of days ago, Monday, I laid out 6 simple truths about how the Democrats shut down the government, why they did it, and why it is so important for them to come to their senses and turn the lights on. Yesterday, I went through 5 fast facts for you about the shutdown, and I explained, as everyone now knows, Chuck Schumer's desperate attempts to rehabilitate his own image by shutting down the government. Today, we're going to talk about some of the consequences of that shutdown and what it means to real people around this country, real Americans experiencing the devastating cost of their political antics here. And I'm going to read you some sample quotes and headlines that we just collected yesterday from around the country. Here's a headline from The Hill. GOP leaders point to Capitol Police missed paychecks as shutdown drags on. So today, the U.S. Capitol Police officers are going to come to work to bravely protect U.S. government officials and staff in these dangerous times. They're going to do that without pay. Many Democrats in this chamber, by the way, I want to note, are going to receive paychecks this month while the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police who are protecting them will not. Here's another headline from the New York Post. Aviation groups warn a government shutdown will delay aircraft safety inspections, maintenance work on critical equipment. While air traffic controllers are going to continue to serve in their posts, thankfully, critical safety inspections are going to stop, increasing risk for air travelers. That affects everybody. Here's another headline from Georgia, local media in Georgia. Central Georgia food banks prepare for surge of new clients during the government shutdown. It's a sad headline. Remember, Georgia's 2 Democrat senators, Warnock and Ossoff, have now voted 5 times to keep the government closed down. 5 times so far. I suspect they may continue, and they're hurting real people in the state of Georgia. Here's one from New Hampshire local media. National parks caught in the crosshairs of government shutdown. Let me point out that both senators from New Hampshire, Senators Shaheen and Hassan, have repeatedly voted to keep the government closed, and New Hampshire's national park sites closed by extension. How about New Jersey? Here's a headline yesterday. Hospital at-home telehealth programs on hold amid government shutdown. You got 2 Democrat senators in New Jersey, Andy Kim and Cory Booker, and they have repeatedly voted against funding these programs which New Jerseyans rely upon daily. Here's one from Michigan. Michigan nonprofit leaders said a shutdown would be at best disruptive and at worst potentially devastating for local communities. There are 2 Democrat senators in Michigan, Gary Peters and Alyssa Slotkin, and they have voted now 5 times to enable this devastation upon their communities. One more, I could do this all day. Here's one more from CBS News. Government shutdown fears have Colorado food banks bracing for potential new visitors. You guessed it. 2 Democrat senators from Colorado, Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper, they keep voting over and over to keep the government closed. Democrats claim they want to negotiate, but that is already happening in a bipartisan, bicameral fashion. And we brought in the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee this morning, Tom Cole, who can talk more about that. But I just want to say this as I yield to Mr. Cole, and then you'll hear from the rest of the leaders, and I'll take some questions. There is one sad and inescapable fact that no one can forget here. This shutdown is nothing more than political cover for Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. They are worried about the Marxist flanked in their Democrat Party. The Marxists are about to elect a mayor in New York City. That's Chuck Schumer's state, and he's terrified that he's going to get a challenge from his far left. I've noted that Chuck Schumer is a very far left politician, but he's not far enough left for the communists, and they're coming for him. And so he has to put up his dukes and show a fight. So they picked a fight on something that's not even related at all to the shutdown, and the funding that we should have gotten done by the end of September. We just need a stopgap measure to give us a little more time to get the job of Congress done. They refuse to do it because they're playing politics, and real Americans are paying the price for it. But let me introduce Chairman Cole, and he can tell you about some of these discussions that have been going on. Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Usually when I follow the Speaker, I usually think I should just say what he said and excuse myself right away. But in this case, it is pretty easy. I mean, we've had a pretty decent year in the House Appropriations Committee, all 12 bills out of committee before September 30th. 3 that we are in negotiations on with the Democrats. Those negotiations have gone very well. We're prepared pretty quickly to close once the government's reopened. We could get at least 3 bills done. The President could sign them in. Those things would be immune from a shutdown until the following September 30th. Then we'd pick another group of 3 or 4 bills, and then we would do in cooperation with our Democratic colleagues and start working on that. So the process, honestly, was moving along pretty well, and then we had unrelated demands, obviously related to repealing work the Congress had already done on Medicaid, and then these new discussions on subsidies. And I do want to point out, at least the bill we have right now in front of us doesn't even go till December 31st. I mean, these actions would still, we could do this work and still have time to turn around, as the President and our leadership has pointed out in both chambers, and sit down and talk about these other issues. But it's hard to do much when the negotiations aren't happening simply because the government is shut down. So again, we're prepared to work. I've got very talented counterparts on the Democratic side. They're good negotiators. We've negotiated a lot of labor issue bills together between Patty Murray, Rosa DeLauro, and myself, and obviously Susan Collins is one of the best legislators in the building. So it's not like we were going to have a hard time, I think, finding common ground, but you do have to restore the government for that to happen. Democrats are not likely to move bills while they've got the government shut down, because it suggests that absent that, we would be moving through the process as normal, and frankly in a much better shape than we've been in recent years. So again, I'm just hopeful that my colleagues in the Senate, and it's worth pointing out, a majority of the Senate's already on our side, a bipartisan majority of 55. So this really does get down to Leader Schumer and the bulk of his caucus just simply shutting down the government over items unrelated to what we normally do in appropriation. I've mentioned this to both the Speaker and the Leader because they make these decisions, but you know, we should not be handling Medicaid on my committee. We should not be handling the Obamacare subsidies simply because we don't have the expertise or the jurisdiction to do either one of those things. What we can do is move the bills through the process, make sure that every soldier is paid, make sure that every air traffic controller is paid, make sure that the American people don't lose any services. So we're prepared to do that. Frankly, I think my Democratic colleagues are prepared to do that once we resolve this shutdown, and that's quite simply in the hands of Leader Schumer and the bulk of his caucus. When they make the mind that they want the government up and running, believe me, we'll move very quickly, and we'll try to move away quickly from a CR status to passing bills individually or in small groups, and get folks up and working again, and get the government restored and continue that process as we're supposed to do. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I just yield back.
Well, appreciate the work that Chairman Cole and the Appropriations Committee have done months and months ago to get us in a place where we would be ready to have all of the appropriations in a place where you can negotiate those differences. It was Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries who chose to take their toys and go home, all to appease the most radical elements of the far left, because Chuck Schumer is more concerned about his political job than he is about the jobs of millions of American families. American families' lives are at stake here. Whether or not we're going to be able to pay our troops, whether or not people can get on an airplane and go visit a relative or take a vacation, whatever their plans may have been, are being disrupted. Real lives of real people are being disrupted so that Chuck Schumer can show the far left Marxist in his party that he's having some kind of tantrum and fighting Donald Trump because he's afraid of the far left part of his political base. A lot of people say, what is this really about? And obviously you see Democrats trying to make it about things that have nothing to do with the basic funding of government, the bill that we passed here in this House just a few weeks ago. And in fact, a lot of Democrats are having buyer's remorse, but every one of us has a voting card. And weeks ago, Republicans and Democrats in the House had an opportunity to put this voting card in the machine and tell the American people where they stand on a government shutdown. And 99% of House Republicans voted yes to keep the government open while we negotiate our differences, and 99% of Democrats voted no to shut the government down. Some of them are having buyer's remorse, and I don't blame them. They're now realizing the dire consequences that their no vote caused to real families across America. Some of them are begging the Speaker, please bring us back in so they can get another shot at this. But you don't get a do-over. They picked the wrong side. They voted to shut the government down. They failed the test. But the good news is they can get bailed out by the Senate. If they really want to solve these problems, if they really want to make sure our troops get paid, which, by the way, we voted for, they voted against, they can call their 2 Democrat senators who have 5 times voted to shut the government down and say, today's the day you can make amends. Today's the day you can open the government up. We only need 4 more votes. It's not a large number. 4 Democrat senators have come to their senses and said, yes, let's open up the government and not have this charade continue, but it takes 4 more because Chuck Schumer wants to have a tantrum. Well, let me tell you what another senator just said yesterday about why this shutdown is going on. He said, quote, this is a Democrat senator yesterday, the point of this shutdown is not just suffering for suffering's sake, but to make a point. So you even have Democrat senators admitting that they're imposing suffering on the American people, but they just want to make a point? My God, millions of lives are at stake. They know they're inflicting suffering on the American people so they can make some kind of point. If you want to have a tantrum, this is not the 3rd grade. This is the lives of American people. Real lives are at stake. Real careers and families. Will they be able to pay their house note come the 15th? That's at stake. The safety of our air traffic control system. So that some senator that wants to have a tantrum can make a point? I think the American people are getting sick of this charade that's going on. They know what the Democrats in the House did to shut the government down. But they also know that just 4 senators doing the right thing can turn this around and open the government back up again. And yes, we have big differences on a lot of things that we need to be negotiating on. All those bills that Chairman Cole and his appropriators sent out of committee, you can't have those negotiations while you're in a shutdown. And they know that. But they don't mind inflicting suffering on the American people because they want to make a point. I think the American people are going to start making points. People can pick up the phone and call their Democrat senator. We did a press call yesterday in the states of Georgia and Maryland, where all 4 senators there could literally end this today, but they've all been 5 times voting no on the bill to get the government back open. It was ironic. The Maryland delegation of Democrats held a press conference just days ago talking about how bad a shutdown will be for the state of Maryland. And they're right. The irony is they're the ones who voted to shut it down. Over 150 employees in the state of Maryland alone will be hurt, and their own Democrat delegation is saying how bad it's going to be, yet they're the ones who voted to inflict that, quote, suffering on the people of Maryland. This madness can end. This madness needs to end with sanity finally emerging. Bring some common sense in. And Chuck Schumer, if you can't do the right thing because you're so afraid of your political job, think about the jobs of millions of families out there who don't want to have that suffering inflicted on them. And let 4 other of your Senate Democrat colleagues do the right thing for you. Let's end this. Our whip. Tom Emmer.
8 days. We are now 8 days into the Democrats' shutdown. 8 days that our troops are not getting paid. Border Patrol agents are going without mission-critical funding. Federal workers are being forced to figure out how they're going to put food on the table for their families. All because Democrats would rather hold the American people hostage to appease their radical base than to pass our clean, nonpartisan government funding bill. As of this morning, Senate Democrats have had 5 opportunities to get the government up and running again for the people they were elected to serve. And the vast majority of them have voted no every single time. Their obstruction is not only a slap in the face to hardworking Americans whose livelihoods are being put at risk due to the Democrats' shutdown, it's also a slap in the face to the constituents who fund their salaries with the expectation that they fulfill their basic constitutional responsibilities. In my hand, I have more than a dozen pages of organizations from across the country representing Americans from every end of the political spectrum echoing the exact same message. And that message is that government shutdowns solves nothing and hurts everyone. So to our Democrat colleagues in the Senate, enough with the political grandstanding. Do the right and responsible thing by passing the House's clean CR immediately. Americans are already hurting. People's jobs are at stake. You can and must end the political games and reopen the government today. And with that, I turn it over to our conference chair, Lisa McClain.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again and again, Democrats have chosen to put illegal aliens over hardworking Americans. That is not my opinion. That is fact. Read the bill. Democrats let millions of illegals pour in across our border under Joe Biden. Democrats gave them driver's license. Democrats allowed them to cast ballots in elections. And now Democrats are fighting. They are fighting to give illegals health care on your dime. Democrats want to take money out of your pockets and give them to illegal aliens so they can get government benefits. These aren't my opinions. These are actual facts. Go to the website and read the facts, right? But what Democrats do when they have no plan, no vision, and no leader, they have to misrepresent the truth. And they do that over and over again, and they think you, the American people, aren't going to notice. They're not going to notice. You're not going to notice that they're taking money out of your pockets and giving them to illegals. They're going to try and put their spin on it. But I challenge you, go to the website and read it for yourself. When Democrats have the choice between standing up for American people or catering to the illegal aliens, what do? They choose illegals every single time. Time and time again. And that's exactly what they're doing again in this government shutdown fight. Democrats are putting illegals above American citizens. So I ask the Democrats, how long will it take you to put Americans first in this funding fight? I ask our senators, Senator Peters and Slotkin, when are you going to put the American people first? The people that elected you to represent them. How many times will you vote against our troops? I ask Senator Peters and Senator Slotkin, how many times are you going to vote not to pay our troops? How many times will you vote against moms and babies who rely on WIC? Against flood insurance? How many times will you vote to put illegals first and Americans last? The answer to that question is as long as the radical base keeps calling the shots. My 2 senators are pandering to their radical base as well. Republicans, however, are actually putting Americans first every single day. And why? Because that's our job. That's our duty. And quite frankly, that is our responsibility. And I call on the Democrats, especially the two Democrats from my state, Senator Peters and Senator Slotkins, please put the American people who you represent first.
Now we'll take a few questions. Yes, ma'am.
Speaker Johnson, thank you. Do you agree that the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois should be in prison?
Should they be in prison? Should the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois be in prison? I'm not the attorney general. I'm the Speaker of the House, and I'm trying to manage the chaos here. I'm not following the day-to-day on that. I do know that they've resisted the introduction of, or the offering of National Guard troops in Chicago, which is a terribly dangerous city and has been destroyed in the process of being destroyed under liberal Democrat governance and their terrible policies. I would just cite for you in response Exhibit A, which is the District of Columbia. All of you were able to walk safely into the Capitol today, and you can park your cars blocks away and walk back to your cars, and you're not in fear of having your purse snatched or your car being jacked or being assaulted. And why is that? Because President Trump had enough of it. He's a strong leader in the Oval Office, and he used the resources that were available to him, the National Guard, to bring order to the chaos. The Democrat mayor of the District of Columbia ultimately said, thank you so much for the reinforcements, and you're all enjoying the spoils of good policy and return to the rule of law. If we could do that in the other major cities in the country where they're having terrible crime crises, that should be seen as a positive, and I think most Americans see it that way. If you're a resident of Chicago or New Orleans or one of these other Democrat-run cities, you've had enough. You're tired of your family being walking in fear and not being able to enjoy their lives, and if President Trump can use the resources and do it in a lawful manner to allow National Guard troops to help bring order and restore the rule of law, that is something that is wildly popular with the American people. Now, if you have elected officials in some of these states who are committed to their radical, soft-on-crime ideology and defunding the police and all the things the Democrat Party championed for the last several years, and they want to stand by that, we encourage them to do so. We'll see what the people think about it. Yes, sir. Back row.
Speaker Johnson, a lot of the free health care for illegal aliens that you've been talking about is care provided in emergency rooms, which are required by federal law to care for anybody, even if they can't pay, even if they're not a citizen. Do you think that that law should be changed?
No. You're talking about EMTALA, which has been part of the law for most of my life. Emergency care is provided without question to anyone who comes in. If you're hemorrhaging and you show up in an emergency room, you get treated. That's something we all support. That's a very good law. We're in favor of it. You're cherry-picking a tiny subset of the issues. We put, and go to my, it's still on the website, speaker.gov, look at page 57, section 2141 of Chuck Schumer's counter-proposal CR that he filed. There's 6 categories of things that they would like to restore funding to, and it adds up to $192.8 billion, almost $200 billion of hardworking taxpayer funds that would go to support illegal aliens and other non-citizens. Now, with regard to EMTALA, are we saying change the law? No. But one of the things they're doing, and one of the things that Chuck Schumer is advocating for and has filed in the law and is using as a leverage point to keep the government shut down, is he literally wants to reimburse hospitals more money for treating illegal aliens than American citizens. Fact. Go look it up. Go look on the website. Don't take my word for it. We're not doing that. If you're a young, pregnant American citizen woman who shows up in an ER and you get treated and they pay the hospital less for treating you than some illegal rabble-rouser who came in from some, South American country to do us harm, that is wrong. The Republican Party stands for common sense. In the big, beautiful bill, we fix that. And Chuck Schumer wants to unwind it, and it is unconscionable to me that he's inflicting all this pain on American citizens so they can play games and try to appease the radical left base. That's what this is. Back, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 questions about federal worker pay. One, is it your understanding that federal workers will be repaid after this shutdown as part of current law? And 2, would you allow a UC, for example, for the military to ensure that they would be paid in the shutdown?
Those are 2 questions. Federal workers, it's my understanding that the law is that they would be paid. There is some other legal analysis that's floating around. I have yet had time to dig into and read that. But it has always been the case, that is tradition, and I think it is statutory law that federal employees be paid, and that's my position. I think they should be. They should not be subjected to harm and financial dire straits because Chuck Schumer wants to play political games. With regard to paying the troops, I want everybody to listen to me very carefully. Hakeem Jeffries and the House Democrats, as Leader Scalise said so well, are clamoring to get back here and have another vote because some of them want to get on record and say they're for paying the troops. We already had that vote. It's called the CR. Every Republican and at least one Democrat had the common sense to say, of course we want the government to stay in operation. Of course we want to pay our troops and our air traffic controllers and our Border Patrol agents, TSA, and everybody else. We did have that vote. The House, I keep saying the House did its job. We did that almost 3 weeks ago. And every Democrat in the House except one voted against it. They voted that they did not want the troops to be paid. They did not want TSA agents to be paid. They did not want air traffic controllers, Border Patrol agents, and all the rest. They live with that vote. They made that decision. The House is done. The ball is now in the Senate's court. It does us no good to be here dithering on show votes. We did it. We sent the product over. It is clean. It is 24 pages in length. It's the most bare minimum that's necessary to keep the lights on for the people. And Chuck Schumer and 43 of his colleagues, Democrats, continue to do the wrong thing. We're not having it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Democrats continue to allege that the Republican-controlled Senate can change the rules to push through the shutdown impasse. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is also now saying the same. Is there any validity to this, and what sort of precedent would that set for a future Democrat-controlled session?
Well, I'd lead the House, but the Senate has its own rules. Some of them are arcane, and when you're in the minority, you don't like it a lot. The filibuster is a tradition over there that's been maintained by both parties whenever they've been in the majority for a long, long time, and they can make a very compelling case as to why that's true. Now, could you go nuclear and blow that all up and end the filibuster once and for all and allow everything for only majority party vote, 51 votes in the Senate? I mean, is it possible? Yes. Is it wise? You can have a lot of people who would tell you it's not. I mean, on the Republican side, I would be deeply concerned if the Democrats had a bare majority in the Senate right now. A Marxist ideology taking over the Democrat Party, do I want them to have no safeguards and no stumbling blocks or hurdles at all in the way of turning us into a communist country? I don't think that's a great idea. That's me. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as they always say. And there are some safeguards in the process that were built in a long, long time ago to prevent one party just running roughshod. Now, there's a big contrast between what I just said and the issue that is before us today. We're not asking Chuck Schumer and the Democrats to do anything different than what they've always done. We've shown you the highlight reel. Chuck Schumer gave impassioned speeches as recently as 7 months ago in March of this year. He said, we have to keep the government open. It would be dangerous and harmful to the American people. He said after the vote, he went on CNN and said, I'm proud of that vote. I didn't like it, but we had to do that. He was right then. He is not right now. We're not asking the Democrats to do anything heroic. We're asking them to do their basic duty and responsibility, as Chairwoman McClain said. Keep the government open. The first responsibility, I'm sorry, I'm aggravated. The first responsibility of the government is to protect the people. And the people who are supposed to be protected are being completely cheated by Democrats in the Senate because they want to play politics. They hate Donald Trump. I mean, they have Trump derangement syndrome. It's very real. Listen to their own comments. And they have to show a fight at any cost. When does that cost become too high? In our view, it already has. They have another chance today to reopen the government, and we'll see if they do the right thing. I pray that they do, because real people are being affected by the games here, and they're sick of it. Thanks so much.
Heads up.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to be joined by Whip Catherine Clark, Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar, one of our co-chairs of the Steering and Policy Committee, Nanette Barragan, Vice Chair of the House Democratic Caucus, Ted Lieu, five-term and under Representative Stephen Horsford, and of course the top Democrat on the Rules Committee, Ranking Member Jim McGovern from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is well represented to my right.
Although we're always to your left.
That would be correct. We're on day 8 of the Republican health care crisis, a crisis that has been visited upon the American people for months and is causing great devastation to working class America, rural America, suburban America, small town America, the heartland of America, urban America, and black and brown communities all throughout America. House Democrats are here at the Capitol on duty and ready to reopen the government and enact a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, while at the same time addresses the Republican health care crisis that is devastating the American people and is causing premiums, copays, and deductibles to go up for tens of millions of Americans because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. We're asking everyday Americans from all across the country to share your story about the premium increases that you are experiencing with your member of Congress, with your United States Senator, and certainly with any of us. If you've received a letter, or when you receive a letter in the next few weeks, we want you to reach out to us and share that letter with us. You can do it at democraticleader.house.gov/share your story. That's democraticleader.house.gov/share your story. We are fighting for you. We know that because of the Republican health care crisis and their refusal to address the Affordable Care Act tax credits that are on the brink of expiring, that millions of Americans are about to see their health care costs double, triple, or quadruple. And when you get that letter in the mail, share it with us. You can share it with us, as I indicated, and you can include a hashtag, my premium went up. My premium went up. And it's going up because of the continued Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. It's my honor to yield to our Democratic whip, Catherine Clark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leader. We are so grateful for your leadership and your vision at this point of healthcare crisis, and I'm proud to be here with these representatives in leadership of our caucus. Here's the terrible thing about the position that the Republicans have backed themselves into with healthcare. It hurts everyone. And this isn't about red states or blue states. These premium hikes, these cuts are going to make health care more expensive and harder to obtain for every American. We had a hearing today in the Capitol, and we were joined by a 29-year-old woman, Mariah Plant from West Virginia. And she told us about her family's struggle. She is the full-time caretaker for her brother, Matt, who suffers a lot of disabilities and needs to be home and be on Medicaid. And without that support, she doesn't know how she would be able to provide for her brother. She also runs a small business and receives a tax credit so that she can afford health insurance under the ACA. So she is looking at potentially a cut to Medicaid that jeopardizes her ability to care for her loved one and her family, and in the immediate future, a steep rise in premiums and no ability for her to make that up. Her budget simply doesn't stretch that far. Like most Americans, she doesn't have that extra hundreds of dollars lying around a month to be able to afford health care. And that was the story from West Virginia. And as I look in my district, as premium notices are coming out, a couple in Massachusetts that makes $88,000 a year is looking at having their premium doubled. If we go to Speaker Johnson's hometown of Benton, Louisiana, that same couple making $88,000 will see a tripling of their premium, 3 times. That could be around $23,000 a year for that couple to pay. People can't afford that. 60% of families in this country cannot meet the basics, cannot afford the basics for their family. And these sort of dramatic jumps in premiums are what is going to pull them under. So here we are, and we implore the Republican Party, go talk to your neighbors and hear their anxieties about what's happening to their health care, what's happening in your shutdown you're imposing on them, and get on a plane and come back to Washington and get to work in reopening this government and protecting health care and the American worker. And with that, I am proud to yield to the chairman of our caucus, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you, Whip Clark, and thank you, Leader Jeffries, for convening us here, for your strength and asking House Democrats to be here, to be present, to be here at work. This is day 8 of the Republican-led shutdown. It's the second week that House Republicans have refused to call us back to the House, the last session day being, I believe, September 19th. Rather than tackling the most pressing issues facing our nation, including the rising costs of health care, Republicans are running from their responsibilities. By failing to negotiate with Democrats to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, Republicans are guaranteeing that they are exacerbating this health care crisis. Take, for example, Iowa's 1st Congressional District, represented by Congresswoman Marianna Miller Meeks. This, by the way, is the same member who said she'll hold town halls when hell freezes over just this week. A 60-year-old couple earning $82,000 a year will see their annual premiums rise by 200%, $13,000 a year. Or another example, Republican Congressman Gabe Evans, Colorado District, a family of 4 earning just $64,000 a year, will see their premiums increase 195%, or $2,500 a year. Think about that. Americans are already struggling with the affordability crisis, and they are being jammed with this health care crisis, all at the hands of Speaker Johnson and his Republican colleagues. And they're lying, claiming that they're the ones working around the clock to fix this health care, to help fix health care. If that's true, where are they? Where are they? Well, Democrats are here trying to solve this crisis that they created with their big, ugly bill. The American people are smart enough to know that who is responsible for their health care costs going up. I hope that Republicans will wake up, that they'll do the right thing, and that they'll work with us to keep health care costs down. Turn it back over to Leader Jeffries.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. We've also been joined by Susan Del Bene, the chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Questions?
Thank you so much. As you pointed out, medical premiums are soon set to rise dramatically, yet Obamacare requires COVID-era funding just to keep healthcare costs down. Doesn't this prove Obamacare was ultimately a failed policy fix for healthcare? And how can Democrats be trusted to fix healthcare when Obamacare was ultimately the solution here?
The overwhelming majority of the American people, including Republicans, support the Affordable Care Act because it's a vital part of providing health insurance coverage to working-class Americans, middle-class Americans, and everyday Americans. Republicans are peddling a lie that the current structure of the Affordable Care Act relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. It has nothing to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. The Affordable Care Act tax credits were put into place as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. That's what we're talking about. Lowering the costs for hard-working American taxpayers at a moment when the Republican health care crisis is skyrocketing the cost of living related to premiums, copays, and deductibles. And by the way, we have a cost of living crisis in the United States of America that Republican policies are making worse. Donald Trump and the Republicans spent all last year promising to lower costs on day one. Costs aren't going down, and the American people know it. Costs are going up. Inflation is going up. The Trump tariffs are adding thousands of dollars a year in additional expenses at a moment when everyday Americans are already struggling to make ends meet. And now Republicans have shut down the government rather than extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits to try to make health insurance more affordable, which is why Democrats are in this fight on behalf of the American people. Second row.
Leader Jeffries, what do you make of Speaker Johnson canceling House sessions this week, and when will you call for the when do you think he'll call for the House to return?
House Democrats were here last week. House Democrats are here this week. House Democrats will be here next week. House Republicans are on vacation right now. That's extraordinary. They canceled votes last week. House Republicans have canceled votes this week. We haven't been in session since September 19th. And on that day, Republicans got out of town before sundown, never to be seen again. As we approach the government shutdown and are now in day 8 of the Trump Republican shutdown. And these extremists don't even want to show up to work when they're requiring hardworking federal employees to show up to work without pay because of the Republican shutdown. And so we've repeatedly made clear we will sit down as Democrats anytime, any place, anywhere with anyone, our Republican colleagues, either here in the Congress or go back to the Oval Office to reopen the government, to enter into a spending agreement that actually makes life better for the American people and that addresses the Republican health care crisis. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add. Yeah.
You know, Republicans love to advocate for more work requirements for poor people, people on SNAP, people on Medicaid. Well, I got an idea. Let's have a work requirement for Republicans to show up to Congress and do your goddamn job. I mean, millions of people are about to lose their health care. This is a serious crisis we're in, and we can avoid it. We can avoid people losing their health care, and we can keep the government open. They need to show up.
Mr. Leader.
Michael.
Well, thank you, Mr. Leader. Yesterday you said that 1-year extension on the ACA subsidies was a non-starter. James Shaheen said that, told me that red line was not helpful to the conversations that she's having in the Senate with her colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Leader Schumer said this morning that he didn't want to negotiate in public and declined to go as far as you did yesterday. Are you still consistent with a red line being no to a 1-year extension, or kind of where are you at today on that?
Yes, if anything is presented to us, of course, the caucus will consider it in good faith. But at the moment, here's where we stand. Republicans enacted massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors as part of the One Big Ugly Bill. And they made those tax breaks permanent, while at the same time ripping Medicaid away from 14 million Americans and stealing food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans. And then, are we to take the position at this moment in time, in the midst of a Republican healthcare crisis, that we can't provide stability and certainty to working class Americans who rely on the Affordable Care Act tax credits? That's an unreasonable position for anyone in Congress to take at this moment in time, relative to what Republicans have done in ripping health care away from tens of millions of Americans. Our position that has been articulated in a bill that was introduced by Senator Patty Murray and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro is a permanent extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits to match the permanent extension that Republicans on their own saw fit to do for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected as part of the Republican continuing effort to subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless. Now, at the end of the day, the caucus, in good faith, will evaluate anything presented from the Senate. But, in our view, as it relates to the Affordable Care Act tax credits and any other effort to address the Republican health care crisis, it has to be meaningful. It has to be meaningful in terms of making a difference in the lives of the American people.
Do you maintain that there's no daylight between you and Senate Democrats?
Yes. Okay. Back.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. There's been a lot of discussion about whether there should be a vote on paying the military during this shutdown. I know some of your members penned a letter to the Speaker asking him to call the House back on it. Today the Speaker said it's unlikely because basically the House had the opportunity to have that vote. Do you believe there should be a standalone vote on military pay?
I believe that we should pay our men and women in uniform, and I support the effort of our members to make sure that that takes place. And shame on the Republicans for remaining on vacation and even refusing to pay our troops because of their continued effort to gut the health care of the American people, which they're putting above even the men and women of the U.S. military. I don't know if Catherine or Ted, you want to address this? Go ahead, Ted.
Having served on active duty in the U.S. military, it is insane not to pay our troops. Some of them are in high-risk missions, and you want them thinking about whether they can get paid, whether they can care for their family. You don't want them focused on that. You want them focused on our national security, and this is going to affect our national security. House Democrats are here. Republicans are on vacation. They need to come back and work, and we need to pay our troops.
I would just add that Mike Johnson sort of doubled down on this and showed their callous disregard for the Americans involved in their shutdown. Because what he said was a vote to give funding to our troops so they don't miss a paycheck while serving our country would be a show vote. A show vote? I can't imagine anything more disrespectful. And it's just insight into how they are viewing this. You take the deal we are offering to the American people, and the Republican deal is we take your health care away in order to pay for permanent tax breaks for the very wealthiest people. And if you don't take that deal, we're going to shut down government. And we're not even going to come to work while we are telling hardworking Americans who serve the public, you've got to go to work and not get paid. But us, we'll get paid and not show up for work. That's how little regard they have for the American people and what they're going through. And this entire system and this entire shutdown is based on their allegiance to the very wealthy. And American families are not making it And every day they make life harder and more expensive. And you can see it in the way they toss aside payment to the troops as a political stunt, some sort of show vote. This is something that we have come together in a bipartisan way at the beginning of every shutdown and voted to do. That is what we do when we are in these terrible situations of a government shutdown. And the fact that they don't do it tells you exactly how they regard our troops and the American people.
Mr. Lee, will you call Speaker Johnson and implore him to swear in Adelita Grijalva?
We have made clear privately and publicly that Representative Adelita Grijalva should be sworn in immediately, without delay. Mike Johnson swore in 2 Republican members of Congress immediately after their April 1st special elections were concluded during a pro forma session when no one else was even around. And that was done by Republicans because they wanted to jam their one big ugly bill down the throats of the American people so they could rip away health care, steal food from children, and enact massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors. Republicans acted with great urgency to swear in 2 right-wing members of Congress to do in the American people in order to reward the wealthy, the well-off, and well-connected. But now, at this moment, Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, who won by much wider margins than those 2 Republican members, there is no dispute or controversy relative to her election. And so many of us are asking the question, why the delay, Mike? What's the delay with respect to Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva? Does it have anything to do with Republicans' continuing effort to hide the Epstein files from the American people? Inquiring minds want to know. Thanks. 3rd row. You.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I got that right? 3rd row. All right.
It's actually for Whip Clark, if you could address this, and Leader Jeffries, feel free to as well. Just curious what steps you're taking right now to make sure that back pay for federal furloughed workers is guaranteed under the 2019 law.
We have already taken the steps necessary because, as you pointed out, that is the law that Speaker Johnson voted for. So we know what the law says, and we know that we cannot continue to stand by when the President of the United States says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to continue to make an already painful shutdown even more painful, sort of on the theory that, until morale improves, the beatings will continue on the American people. And it's all about harming workers. So, and now he's saying, well, maybe it won't withhold the pay for people who are working without pay for everybody, just those non-deserving workers. Mike Johnson knows the law. Donald Trump knows the law. The workers deserve pay. And that's full stop. That is something we voted on in the first Trump administration. He signed that law. So this isn't up for some sort of legal interpretation. That is the law. But that seems to be very out of vogue with this version of the Republican Party. But the law is clear, and we are going to stand here for workers who are being put in the position of having to show up for their jobs and do their work without pay or be sent home and furloughed, and hope that the Republicans come back to Washington and end their shutdown and get people back to work.
I want to give Nanette Barragan an opportunity to respond to the Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva situation. Nanette, of course, is the immediate past chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus.
Well, thank you. I want to echo the leader's remarks and say, look, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is at the largest it's been. We're going to add a new member. She was duly elected. She's ready to work. She's been showing up here. It's a real disservice, and I think a slap in the face to those constituents that voted for her, that she's not being sworn in to be able to do her work as an official member. And of course, we know that she is set to be the last signator on the discharge petition. So I continue to implore the Speaker to do the right thing. I believe he said yesterday he would get it done, and then they walked it back. But we have a Latina from Arizona who's ready and able, and let's not disenfranchise those voters as they have to sit and wait until the Speaker thinks, this political game ends. We should all really call on him to swear her in immediately.
Thank you, Leader. A follow-up on a question that was asked before. We talk about how these subsidies are needed to keep premiums low, and I think there is a question in a lot of people's minds that if these subsidies are truly needed to keep those premiums at that level, does that signal that there are reforms needed to the ACA to lower premiums in general?
It's incredibly important to make sure that we extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for working-class Americans, middle-class Americans, and everyday Americans. People like Mariah Plant, who we heard from earlier today. She's a 29-year-old from a rural part of West Virginia, a state that Donald Trump won by 41 points. Mariah is a small business owner who gets her health care through the Affordable Care Act, and that's made affordable by the tax credits. If those tax credits expire, health care will be unaffordable for Mariah. She'll have to pay thousands of dollars more per year, and she's already dealing with the adverse implications of the Republican assault on the health care of the American people related to the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Why is that? Because Mariah is the sole full-time caregiver for her older brother, Matt. And Matt is legally blind, and Matt is someone who is entirely nonverbal, and Matt is someone who requires full-time care. And because of Medicaid as it currently exists, Matt is able to be cared for at home in a loving environment. But now that's threatened by the Republican assault on Medicaid. You know what's also threatened for Mariah and Matt? The fact that their rural hospital may close because of the Republican assault on the health care of the American people. And then on top of that, Mariah may not even be able to go see a doctor herself because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. That's why Democrats are in this fight. It's not a political struggle, it's personal for the American people. And just like we're telling Mariah's story, elevating it, as she did earlier today at our hearing, so courageously and authentically on behalf of everyone else in West Virginia and throughout the country, we're asking the American people to share their stories with all of us about the hardship that you're facing as a result of the Republican health care crisis and the need for something to be done about it right now. I want to give Stephen Horsford an opportunity to say anything, and Susan Del Bene.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I will just add, as a member of the Ways and Means Committee and Subcommittee on Health Care, these enhanced premium tax credits, one, are supported by 78% of Americans, and they understand the impact of those tax credits to their ability to afford health care. And just like Republicans made a priority to pass massive tax breaks for the very wealthy, Democrats made it a priority to give tax relief to middle-class families so that they could afford health care. We're using the tax code to help middle-class families afford health care, not the ultra-rich get another tax break for a yacht or whatever else they're buying. This is a matter of life and death, and it's a matter of clear priority by the House Democratic Caucus, led by Leader Jeffries and Whip Clark and the rest of our leadership team. And it is personal, because not only are our constituents dealing with this issue, but members of Congress are dealing with these critical issues. And we will make sure that we continue to defend every person's right to health care. It is an economic imperative, and it's a human right.
You know what happens when more people have health care coverage? People are healthier, and we save money. I think it's really important to think about the fact that when we have these tax credits in place, that actually saves us money. Cutting the tax credits means more and more people aren't going to have health care, more and more people going to the ER, more and more uncompensated care that others have to pick up the cost for, raising prices on everyone, not just folks on the exchange, raising prices on everyone. Our healthcare system is challenged. We see more rural hospitals, more services in hospitals closed, more folks, more staff being let go. It's a spiral. So not only because of the incredible stories like Mariah that the leader was just talking about, but also from a fiscal standpoint, it's the right thing to do. It helps our communities. More people have coverage. It's more fiscally responsible. And yet Republicans are still on vacation and have no plan on how to continue going forward.
I just want to say, look, I sit on Energy and Commerce. I sit on the committee that does everything on health care. And I can tell you, hearing after hearing after hearing, we are not hearing Republicans come up with legislation or bills that's going to bring down the cost of their health care. On the contrary, everything that's being done is raising cost. So the party in power right now, the Republican Party, who controls what the hearings are not having hearings on how to lower the cost of health care or premiums. Look, we want to make sure health care is accessible to everybody, whether you're a Democrat, or you're a Republican or independent in rural America, in small towns, in cities like mine. This is about health care. This is about getting everybody access to health care. And I can tell you that we do not have those hearings. The party in charge has not expressed an interest in committee on having hearings on how to bring the cost down. So Democrats are fighting to do just that.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. We've talked a lot about the countless Americans who are going to lose their paychecks in a prolonged shutdown. We've also seen lawmakers from both chambers and both sides of the aisle say that they will forfeit their checks to stand in solidarity with those Americans. Are you or any members of your leadership team planning on doing the same thing?
That's an individual decision that every member will have to make on November 1st. Hopefully, Republicans will actually get back to Washington well before that, do their job so we can sit down, reopen the government now, enact a spending agreement that makes life better for the American people now and addresses the Republican health care crisis now.
Have you heard from the White House at all since your meeting with the president? And do you think that he ultimately needs to engage in order to have the Republicans perhaps take up health care as well?
In the White House meeting that we had last week, I made clear to the president, with Johnson and Thune sitting right there, that the reason why Leader Schumer and I demanded this meeting is because at the end of the day, nothing's going to happen on the Republican side unless Donald Trump tells them to do it. The Republicans here in Congress have long ago abandoned the notion that they're part of a separate and co-equal branch of government. They don't see their jobs that way. They function like functionaries. like wholly owned subsidiaries of the Trump administration. And all they've done all year, these Republicans here in Capitol Hill, is to rubber stamp Donald Trump's extreme agenda. That's raising costs on the American people and ripping health care away from them at the same time. If we're going to get a resolution here, we need presidential leadership. That's what Donald Trump himself said 12 years ago in 2013. If a shutdown happens, the buck stops with the president. This is now the second time that the government has been shut down under Donald Trump, and he's in the Presidential Witness Protection Program. He's nowhere to be found. He's got time to be on the golf course, but apparently doesn't have time to sit down with Democrats in the House and the Senate to reopen the government. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
2-game series now.
I told you what was going to happen yesterday.
Well, Mariners.
Thank you.